Welcome to the Effective Evaluator podcast, where we are dedicated to helping you develop your evaluation skills. I am your host, Lisa Branch. This podcast is part of a special project from the Toastmasters International Program. For any of our listeners not familiar with Toastmasters, it is a not-for-profit educational organization that teaches public speaking and leadership skills through a worldwide network of clubs. Each club has the same mission statement, which is to provide a supportive and positive learning experience in which members are empowered to develop communication and leadership skills, resulting in greater self-confidence and personal growth. Joining me today is my friend and mentor, Christina Kruis. In today's episode, we will continue the conversation with distinguished Toastmaster Christina Kruis, taking a look into what it is that we actually evaluate in a Toastmaster speech. Christina, thanks again for joining us today.
I'm thrilled. Thanks for having me, Lisa.
Excellent. Well, the big question is, especially from our new Toastmasters, when they see a speaker present, what should they be focusing on in order to provide feedback to the speaker? How have you, as an experienced Toastmaster and evaluator, broken down the different components of what the speaker is providing to us and delivering? How do you break that down into some bite-sized pieces that people can kind of be able to narrow in on and focus in when they are listening to and observing the speech in order to provide an effective evaluation?
Such a great question. I wish somebody had given me the magic answer when I first started Toastmasters. But I think there are some strategies that can really break it down. And as you hear and see more of what you would like and what you'd like to take forward as an evaluator to your future speakers that you're evaluating, start out simple. So I like to break it down into 4 parts. And often what I'll do if I don't have the specific criteria from a speech project, I will just divide my page in 4. So in one corner, I'll have words, structure, body, and voice. And as a speaker speaks, the words that I hear, I'll write down. I'll just quote them exactly. I love this phrase. That was so clever the way you described this. Wow, that really made me think or understand the feeling you were having. In the structure part, I always write down the first thing they said. Hello, I'm here. Or whether they started with a bang. And if I can remember, I'll write the last thing they said so that the bookends of what they actually did are being repeated accurately. I think this structure matters a lot. It's the roadmap for the audience to understand. And between the words and the structure, somewhere in there, as an evaluator, I need to figure out why this person is speaking. And I always say, you don't come up here unless you have a purpose for speaking. And if at the end of your speech, I still don't know that purpose, then let's see if we can reorganize your speech so that the next time you want to say your message, your audience is actually picking up the message you're trying to give out. So the whole time I'm listening is, what is the purpose? What are you trying to convince me? What are you trying to make me laugh? Do you want me to contribute to your cause? Do you want me to join your parade? Whatever it is, I should know that by the end of the speech. And if you haven't told me that at the beginning, maybe that's a suggestion I need to give you. As much as the content is super important, we see and we hear body language and vocal variety. So in the bottom of my page, I would put those 2 things, the body and the voice. So any gesture that I see, I will write down. Any opportunity for a gesture that I see that didn't happen, I would write down. You could have made this better if, and then I would demonstrate that to the speaker in the evaluation. The same thing with the voice. And I love, one of my favorite suggestions is don't tell me, show me. So if you're trying to tell me a story, don't say he said, she said. Talk to me in dialogue. Give me the 2 characters, use the voices, use the accents, use the singing, use the dancing, whatever it is. And so if a speaker's not doing that, that's a one way to actually engage the audience a little more. So across the one single page, the words, the structure, the body, and the voice, I might write down 15 different things, but by the time it's my turn to evaluate, I'm just going to pick what was superb and what was an easy alternative. This is something that you might want to incorporate next time. So we want to have both all the time. And if I'm dividing it up in those four, I may not even hit one category because they were super in it or there wasn't anything for them to improve in. But I think if I'm looking with sort of four eyes and four ears that way, there's going to be something that I can congratulate the speaker on and something that maybe I can offer a suggestion. And sometimes when the speaker's really, really strong, the suggestion might be, that was if you were giving it to a technical group. But supposing you were speaking to a younger audience or a group of children, you might want to consider changing your speech and using this kind of language. So at least there's an alternative, even if it's not necessarily an improvement, you're giving a different perspective of what their message would be for a different audience.
Do you think that some areas are easier to pick up on? Like, is there a place where a new evaluator should start or focus on when they start evaluating?
I think one of the benefits of hearing lots of speeches is starting to decipher what is a good speech. And so when we evaluate, we have to be careful that we're evaluating to the best speech that person could do, and we're not seeing it. So if you were doing a speech about nutrition, for example, then this is what it would look like in my mind. And now I'm matching you to that. So I think it's really critical. What is the message? If you don't have a powerful message and I don't understand your earnest or your passion by the end of the speech, my job as an evaluator is to bring that out of you. Not necessarily have a dialogue in the meeting right then and there, but what is it you were trying to get me to think, to feel, to act?
Mm.
And you missed the mark because you didn't take the opportunity to show me this fruit is really powerful, as the cure-all for whatever. You started to tell me about it, and then you just kept going on the menu and you forgot about the benefits of it, whatever it is. But I think the content really matters. And when we evaluate the content, we're talking about the message, and then what was the roadmap that got us to that message. Was it clear? Was it logical? Did it flow, or was it choppy and sort of join the dots in all different directions? I think if we start looking for those things, the easy things are, what are they doing with their body or their face? Or did I hear any kind of different speed or pace or excitement in the voice? Those are simple to pull out. But when you can actually give feedback to make the content delivered more effectively, then I think that's the deeper evaluator.
Mhm.
And that is most definitely the deeper speaker in, I'm not just up here singing and dancing. I really have a message for your heart or for your thinking process. And I want you to agree, to listen to my voice, to my opinion, to my facts, to my research, to my story, and go out there and do whatever I'm inspiring you to do.
Mhm.
And I think those are the speakers that we remember. And those are the speakers in my mind that we're trying to create.
Mhm.
When we're doing our little bit of feedback, we want that person to go forward with passion and enthusiasm and conviction. And that often will just naturally flow in voice and gestures. Some people are very eloquent and have great vocabulary, but don't sing and dance if you want. Other people sing and dance, but they have no message. They're just entertaining. And that's a message too. But I think they need to understand that there's an audience listening and you have to take them through this journey in a logical way or you're going to lose them. So they both matter,
Mhm.
the delivery as well as the story or the content. But the delivery won't happen without the content. And I think if we want to make really effective speakers, and when we think about the best speeches in the world, generally the first couple come to mind are always politicians, but they're trying to move a crowd. They're trying to win a war, whether it's a real war or an economic war or a social justice war. Those ones are with the clever quotes. Those are the ones that we will repeat over and over again. So let's help each other bring that to the table, bring that to the stage.
Yeah. From my own personal experience, I remember receiving an evaluation. Actually, it might have been from you. and and the evaluator provided me with an alternate ending to my speech, something that was a little bit more impactful, a little bit more punchy. And that was the best kind of information that I needed. How do I make this speech even better than what it already was? What can I rewrite? What can I reorder?
Mhm.
Because I came to Toastmasters already giving presentations in front of women who were developing their own businesses. But with my engineering background, I had never really spent a lot of time learning, how do you develop a compelling speech?
Mm.
How do you write something and keep within your time limit? Right? How do you have a hook at the beginning to create interest, and get your listeners, to sit on the edge of their seat? And sometimes when I'm giving a speech, maybe I hadn't practiced it or polished it, so I have to rely on notes. Right? I already know that that's something that I can improve on. So if my evaluator comments on, hey, if you had spent some more time memorizing your speech, you wouldn't have to use the notes. Like, I know that.
Yeah, I
Right?
agree. Yeah.
And so I think that, like what you said, providing comments on the content and how to really make that message better. For example, when someone's describing something, encourage them to use storytelling techniques, because using an example or an illustration really, like, that helps the memory sink in, and you're going to remember the story and then the main point
Yeah.
of the
Tell a story,
story.
make a point. Yeah.
And again, a lot of us don't have the background or the experience in order to incorporate that, so we need to learn that. We need to know how to do that effectively, and also how to paint a beautiful picture. For me, I'm a teacher as well, and I'm very informational, and so I have to remember to make make it more visual, right? Give them the sights and the sounds and the smells, and help them see it in their mind, and not just give them the details, which tends to be a little bit more dry, a little bit
Academic.
more
Yeah.
boring, right? And so I know that I have personally appreciated other people's perspective on, and what you said, don't just say, oh, you need to, become, like, increase your vocabulary and
Mm.
be more vivid and descriptive. But when you give the example, that is the light bulb moment. And do you have any suggestions on how people can focus on that or develop that type of analytical thinking as they progress in their evaluation skills?
I think always a personal story is the magic connector with the audience. Whether it's true or not, that's up to you. But making that story personal and a real, uh, even a roller coaster of emotions is what's going to hook your audience. And you can do that right from the first sentence, or you've got to set it up. I love listening for the five senses, like you said. And we always encourage the story to get the audience to be sitting in the scene with you. What did it smell like? What did it taste like, sound like, look like? And then feel like is touch, but it's also, did it touch my heart? Did it make me feel an emotion? So if you're creating a setting with all of that, your audience is going to be more engaged because they can relate to that setting, whether they've been there or it was something similar to somebody they know. So therefore, as an evaluator, when they're giving their story, it was great how you told us what the snowy looked like, and you told us that you could hear the swish of the skates. But when you told me you could smell the hot chocolate in the arena, then I was there with you. That was amazing. And that's the going the extra mile sort of thing, where most people will tell you what it looked like and then stop. So as an evaluator, you can always listen for those five senses. I think the other thing, and the comment is tell a story, make a point. And you got to do the story first, because that's when people will say, I remember that story about you. Tell that story, use dialogue, use your five senses, bring the audience into the canoe with you, into the car with you, into the concert with you, into the kitchen with you, whatever it is, so that they internalize that being in the setting. And that is what you're trying to do as a speaker, is how do I get my audience involved with me? So I think that as an evaluator, you listen for what's the purpose. And then, I loved all your great points. And you told me 5 great points for how to eat healthy, but you didn't tell me how it affected you. So next time, bring it back. And for each of those points, tell me a story. That's going to totally change their speech writing, but it's also going to totally change the way they can influence an audience. So I think if we're not hearing those things, and then I think the other thing is listen for what's not necessary, right? If you're trying to make it better, don't tell me, oh, I had a terrible time parking and I didn't think I'd make it. And that's not what I came to listen to, right? Don't tell me your name. Don't tell me your title of your speech. It was already introduced. So I think we can clean up the beginning, and then we can clean up the ending. You don't just fizzle out. You want to have a strong ending where people go, oh, she's winding up, he's ready to conclude. Don't say, I'm concluding. Use your brains and find the words that take them to the end of your story in a more original way, because then it's going to be unique and it'll be remembered. I think when we start out, we go, here's my beginning, and here's the 3 things I want to tell you, and now I'm coming to the ending. Well, that works really well, but that gets really boring fast. So as we grow as speakers, we find different ways through vocabulary, which can be extremely specific, very detailed, and lead us within that journey through the speech or through the stories, so that the audience isn't lost on going back to that powerful message and why you got up in the first place. So I think you're really hitting the nail on the head as an evaluator. What am I listening for? What am I not hearing? And that might be my suggestions. What am I hearing that's really engrossed me? And how do I give that speaker the confidence to continue doing that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. And again, from my experience, I do feel that the longer that you're in Toastmasters, or the longer that you're listening to people's speeches, that's going to give you the experience to be able to comment on what makes a good introduction, for example, because you've heard the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And so you can draw from that to say, okay, this is, I liked this because, or and so I think that I just want to give hope to people who are brand new to evaluation, that some of these things you're not going to necessarily be great at right away, that this is a skill that needs to be developed. And part of that is by regularly coming to meetings, right? Hearing speeches, hearing other people's evaluations. I'm blown away, right? Sometimes I'll write things down, and if I were the evaluator, this is what I would say. And I'll almost compare it to what the evaluator points out and what was important to them, because then sometimes I can be like, yeah, like, okay, I was right. Like, I noticed this, and the evaluator also noticed it. So that would be a good thing to share. And there's some things that I had on my list that I thought, you know what, they spoke about better things, like, so I can, maybe reprioritize what I would have said. So it's great that you can, again, continue that learning experience and develop as you go. Let's go on to we've talked about the content and the structure, and using your words. Now let's focus a little bit more on the body language, right? Which would include your gestures, your facial expressions, where you are, in your speaking area, whether it's this little box on Zoom or whether you have a stage in a physical presence. And in addition to that, then we can also talk about the vocal variety, right? Your pacing, your volume, your melody as you speak. So what are some things that we can focus on for the body language?
So I like to divide that into probably 4. What are they doing with their face, especially online? Your eyes, we know you're supposed to look at the camera, but what your face, whether it's your smile or your frown or your tears, So the face is really, really strong. If you're online or if you're being videoed in a conference center, so you're the jumbotron, then that's, you need to have the face part. What we do with our hands, because those are gestures and they can be as big as the room. And then what do we do with our feet? So do I actually change my position in the stage or online? Not so much, but and I could be standing online, so I might actually use a room. So I like to kind of think about what is effective, what was necessary. It's very interesting, I find, with a lot of beginner Toastmasters, they'll just pace back and forth in front. And it's nervous energy. We all know it. They have no idea. They think, wow, I'm using the stage. Aren't I great? So immediately you want to say, why are you walking? Why are you changing positions? So whatever they're doing, if their hands are moving too much, then too much isn't giving me the stress of what is important. If I'm walking too much, it's not giving me the stress of what's important. And certain parts of moving forward or backward or left or right or center or backwards from the camera or forwards from to the camera can actually and do enhance the message. So if we can understand moving forward is more emphatic, moving backwards is more suspenseful, for example, and that was part of their speech, then we can correct or suggest those body language moves. The same with using a voice. If I'm always the same, my audience is going to be bored. That's where I like to encourage dialogue. If you're telling the story, use the two, the excited child and the disciplinary parent or the commanding boss or whatever it is. So we're looking for why would it be fast? You were telling a story that was really exciting, but it was slow in your telling. You're excited. Tell us in a quick way. Get us excited. You were really passionate, but your body, your voice was very robotic in telling us all the points. Show your passion. Go high, go low, go fast, go slow, and change it up. And people will actually script their speech with move forward, speed up, pause really long. Pauses are as effective in vocal variety as a loud voice or a whisper. So every part of the speech, as I'm listening to the content, that's emotional. Does it match what they're doing with their voice and with their body? If it is, congratulate them. If it isn't, offer it as an alternative. And I think those, when you finish listening to the speech, and as much as you can scribe and watch at the same time, then pick the more dramatic ones. Or I don't mean dramatic in wide and big and theatrical, but what would make the most impact to change? And your job is probably only 3 to 5 things, depending on the ability of the speaker. And then you can always talk to them later. And this word, you might have changed to that word. You could be even more specific. But I think I find a speech that covers all of those things proves to the speaker that I listened to you today. And I think that's one of the things that's super important for an evaluator. You probably heard this speaker 10 times, 20 times, 3 times before. Doesn't matter what they did before. What was really strong today? What might you want to change for next time from today? And that could happen in the 4 quadrants if you want: words, structure, voice, and body language. So I'm always watching. Oh, they put their arm up really big. I'm going to tell them that was great because there was a gesture and that was the only one, right? Or they changed their voice and they screamed like in the story. Way to go. Or they did a dance. Or sing. I mean, if they sing or dance, literally, that's extreme voice or extreme body language in my mind. Congratulate them on it or tell them it didn't fit. Don't just stick it in there. It's like the joke at the beginning that has nothing to do with the speech. You lost me. Not a good start. Yeah. So I think that trying to pinpoint or address each of those issues gives the speaker something very specific so that they're working in all areas of presenting. You don't want to just tell them all about their body language and never comment on what the speech was about. Or you don't want to tell them how their voice was monotone and not say, but your speech was superbly inspiring in that you went through that story. You experienced that in your life. And then whatever it is, somewhere in there, acknowledge the personal or encourage the personal story.
Yeah. And I'm reminded with the evaluations that I have received that when they give a suggestion, that they give usually they back it up with a reason. For me, I would just continue to talk. And I'd be excited. I'd have the speed, I would have a bit of vocal variety, but I would just keep on going, and I didn't like the silent moments. But the problem with that is that I wasn't allowing my audience to catch up with something that I was saying. Or maybe I asked them a question that was rhetorical. I didn't expect an answer, but I also didn't let them process. And I
Or
was,
a joke, right?
yeah.
Or a funny, a hilarious or a humorous situation or the punchline of the story. And then you just keep going. And there was a story, it was a district speaker, and he talked about his children were on the rock at the top of the waterfall. And then he said, and then when we were at home having dinner, and the whole audience went, what? How'd you get off the rock? Was it a helicopter? Did they give you ropes? So every time somebody kind of leaves us hanging, you left me on the rock. Like you didn't join the dots. How did you come out of that accident and now you're walking today, or whatever the extreme is, right? So I think there has to be the drama, the excitement, the craziness, the suspense, the danger, whatever it is, but then stop and let everybody go, this is not a good situation, or this is really exciting, and then bring it forward again. But you're right. The vocal variety, really fast, really loud, will never work if it's throughout the whole speech. It's the change that
Mhm.
actually catches our attention.
Yeah, the
So we've
contrast.
had speeches that are super high, like super passionate, very excited, very loud, very fast, and everybody's like, give me a second, I gotta catch up. So, but then when you stop and then you whisper, it catches everybody's attention and it starts all over again. So it is that we call it vocal variety for a reason. And if a speaker is missing opportunities where they could have changed their voice, then that, in my opinion, is the job of the evaluator to bring that to light.
Mhm. Let's talk for a quick moment about the vulnerability that the speaker feels, right, in putting together as best they can, kind of their best performance, whatever their level is at, and right, putting themselves out there and having people comment. Do I think it's natural for people to worry about being judged or not performing as well maybe as they think that they do, or they're worried about some of the comments. Like, is there a reason to worry? Like, how do we help those new speakers who are tentative, but like but they need that confidence, they need the growth, but they're not really ready to put themselves out there yet. They just want to observe, because they're really
Mhm.
not sure the type of feedback that they're going to get. They don't want to be rejected. They don't want to get their feelings hurt. Can you comment on either your experience with that or with other people, and what that's like?
I think that's human. We all want to be successful first step. So we have that incorporated in our program. Just try a table topics. Go totally crazy. Try something really different, or just be you. I'm really quiet. I'm really loud. I always try to be funny, but you're not laughing. I'm very serious, but you guys don't get me. Do it in table topics. I think the vulnerable speaker, the one who really shows their passion, their emotion, their caring for wanting things to be better, it's a bit cliche, but I'm telling you this because I want you to change how you behave out there for somebody else. Then their biggest success is when they show their vulnerability. So we've seen it many, many times. Oh, I was down and out. Look at me, I'm a successful millionaire. Everybody's so inspired. I don't think that's the only formula. I don't think that's the only way to be personal story. There are little wins in our day to day that can inspire other people and actually probably are more effective because it's closer to my level. I'm not going to be a millionaire succeeding in whatever you did. But you don't have to risk it all at once. And that is the beauty of Toastmasters. We will support you. I just wanted to add one other part. If you do get a bad evaluation orally in a meeting, there's a safety net, because we have a general evaluator who then has a responsibility to say, but your speech was, you showed confidence getting up and giving us that difficult talk, or you showed us. So I think after the meeting, when we're in person, it's very easy to swarm the speaker and say, hey, you won. And we see that in the contest setting. So a new person will win a contest, but they have no idea what they just did, right? And we're very, very supportive and hold them up. But when you're getting to the next level and the next level, we can evaluate for an hour, a 5-minute speech, because you want every piece of what's going to make me better. Some people are very receptive to that. Some people will never compete again because of it. But I think you as a speaker have to decide, how much am I going to put myself out there to say I want to grow? And as an evaluator, we absolutely have a responsibility to build them up, to motivate them, even if they bomb that presentation. I always give that example. A person who didn't speak English very well and was super nervous and did like a 90-second speech. But the evaluator got up and said, what a gorgeous smile, and how courageous of you to do this when it's not your home language. There's always something that we can provide that will give that person hope that, yeah, that was worth coming today. I'll try that again. And I think we get to know each other a little bit over time. Or a person comes to a meeting and says, I'm here for feedback. Give me everything you got. Then you do it, not with kid gloves, but still in a positive manner, and respectfully all the time. There is a person inside that speaker. And we've seen it where it's been very easy to say all the wrong things and nobody picks up on the right. That's not supposed to happen in our meetings. And my experience is that 99% of the time people are, way to go. I'm glad you were here. I learned something today. You made me smile. What a funny story. What a great sharing of your family or your work or your travels or your giving in your community. And you've inspired me. I have two stories really quickly. One was, I did a story for a boy had come to our family, my sister's family, for an operation. And I talked about how my niece was raising money for the school. And I was just congratulating her and say how great it was. When I got all my evaluations at the end of the meeting, there was a $10 bill. Give this to your niece. I wasn't pitching for money, but I was so passionate and so inspired by Sasha that somebody had done that. And another time I stood up and I talked about Habitat for Humanity. And before the end of the meeting, everybody said, where do I sign up? Where do I? That wasn't my goal, but because it had been such an effective, informative about that organization, people were moved to go. And 2 people went and hammered nails and 2 others went and fed the group. And it was an hour away. And I was so impressed that my speech could do that. If that doesn't give you confidence, I mean, that was just so beyond what I expected. And I think regardless of the ability of the person, there's always something we can find within their courage to get up and speak that we owe it to them to give them that back.
Yeah. And I know I have seen people who are ready to share a story that is personal, and there's that moment, right? The quivering lip, the quavering voice, the overwhelmed with emotion. And even though they might be embarrassed about that after, because they want to present themselves as this polished, put together person, I think that opening themselves up to that, sharing that with the audience, it just stirs in me connection and empathy and compassion. And it makes me feel like I know them personally, even that little bit more than what I already do. And so I want to just encourage people that even if they stumble and make a mistake, again, the purpose of our evaluations are to encourage and motivate. And sometimes as we're developing as evaluators ourselves, we might say something that comes across as a little critical as we're developing our own language. And that's another thing. In another episode, we're going to talk about how to evaluate effectively. How can we provide an evaluation, right, that leaves a positive impression, even when we're giving feedback on things that they can work on, that they hear the support and encouragement and the things that they did well, in addition to the things that they can work on, and the type of language that we can use. There are techniques for that, and we will go over that in another episode. But for today, I really just wanted to focus on what we evaluate on, what people can focus their attention on when they're evaluating. And I love the example that you gave of bring in your own piece of paper, break it into quadrants, and look at the words and the vocabulary that they're using, look at their organization and their structure, have a space that you can focus on their body language, their gestures, their facial expression, the staging. And then the final one is also their vocal variety, how they're using their voice, their pacing, the contrast in it, the loud, the quiet, the fast, the slow, the high and the low, those kinds of things. And then kind of like what you alluded to, but I just want to touch on this again. Sometimes I find as an evaluator, I have so much, so much that I want to, like good things, right? So much that I want to share and tell them, but I have a limited amount of time in order to do that. Do you have, and this will kind of give us a teaser a little bit for the next episode on how to evaluate effectively. Can you just give us a couple tips here as we end on what we should focus on? Like, do we, do we do like three great things, two tips? Do we try and do a variety, or do we focus in and just say, okay, I'm just going to focus on your structure today. You can have my notes to see how you did on vocal
Yeah.
variety and that sort of thing. Or do we try to, pick a whole bunch of things to show that we have been observant in a variety of ways? Like when we feel a little overwhelmed and we want to do a good job, what are some things that we can start looking at to prioritize and focus on?
I love to find the uniqueness in that speaker because that teaches the audience. So if they start with a top hat, or they start with a loud voice, or a compelling question, then that would for sure come out in my evaluation. I like to start with all four things, but if one area wasn't concentrated on or didn't shine very much, I would say that they would need to try to use more body language. Not try to use more body language, but here's two places where you might have used body language. If you don't have a specific, don't just say you need more vocal variety. Get out of there. You have to say, in the story when you were talking on the phone with your mother, you could have shown your passion or your emotional time or your sadness in the way that you used your voice, by slowing down, giving us more pauses, and then do the actual words in the way to demonstrate it. I don't think we can give everything. I always, what was really, really strong for sure, something of each of those four things, either it was great or you need to work on it this way, 1, 2, 3, not necessarily 1, 2, 3, but here's 2 or 3 examples. Here's a big example that might have changed it. If you changed your ending, you were so close, you just needed one more question and you would have had everybody hooked to be talking about your speech later after the meeting. I think trying to fit it all in, it gets lost. So find the one thing you really want to see them improve in whatever category it is. The one thing that was super amazing, your smile, your characteristic, your enthusiasm, your overall personality, something that's really strong that will give them confidence that that's always with me. I'm not having to keep working on that part. And then find the uniqueness. What did they do that was so good? Or what was the one thing that you just thought, oh man, if they just tweaked it here, that might have worked. And then you can speak to them after the meeting for all the other things, but trying to shove it all in overpowers their speech. It's like re-saying the speech that's not worth anything. And there's other people in the room that might have had observations as well that'll come from them. So that's okay. But I wouldn't pick more than 3 or 5 things at most. 2 of these were really great, something to work on, and wow, you have such a great smile, people are going to love you, or your stage presence is just so natural. I can't wait for, when you come in front of us again, something that will carry them.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, what's really important is that you encourage them to try again. So come back with those natural talents you have and stick around with us, because we'll show you what are some of the strategies that you might want to incorporate as well.
Yeah. And one thing that I'm learning too, less is more.
It is. It's like, three big gestures or three well-timed gestures are better than your hands in front of you the whole time on the screen. One scream and 30 seconds later, one whisper is much more effective than a passionate, high, loud voice throughout the whole speech.
Mm-hmm.
If it's all the same, you might as well just narrate it to us, then we wouldn't have had a headache at the end, right?
Yeah.
Or it's so quiet and there's no microphone. You've got to learn to project. Like that's our responsibility as an evaluator to not overlook. Those are really strong things that we need to have. But I strive every time to find something unique that's never been said to another speaker, and it's not easy. But if there's a specific example in their speech that can come forward, then that's what makes them feel special. That's what makes them feel that they have something to contribute to their cause, whatever it is, their reason for speaking.
Yeah. And not only for the speaker, but for the evaluator too, right? Where you don't have to comment on everything, right? You don't want to overwhelm the poor speaker, right? It's more impactful if you focus in on one or two things, doing exactly what you said, Christina, giving them specific examples. Here's how you could have done it. That's where people learn, because if you just say you need to work on this, but they're like, but I don't know how. Like,
That's why I'm here.
I thought I did
That's
it
why
well.
I'm here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought I
exactly.
did it well, but you're saying it could be better. And so when you give that specific example, they're like, oh, I get it now, right? And you can give them that light bulb moment, which is one thing that I love.
I
So
think that's the success of a really good evaluator, is when they can show what they want to see in the improvement.
mhm.
If you're just making general statements, then go back to your evaluation notes and find out if you could be more specific. If we're not being specific as evaluators, we're not helping the speaker, we're not developing ourselves as listeners, and the audience is getting nothing from it. Anybody could give an evaluation before a person speaks. And if it's general enough, it'll work for anybody. But if you're not proving that you listened to that speaker at that time, then I think you have some work to do as an evaluator. And that's why we all come together. We learn for every phase of our meeting how to do table topics, how to speak with a prepared speech, and then the evaluations, which I find super learning. And even a new evaluator will bring a different spin and a different perspective, and the experienced people can take that and put it in their toolbox. So
well, and that kind of wraps up this podcast with a little bit. So I've got two teasers. One is that we're going to do an episode on how to effectively evaluate, looking at ways to focus in and provide specific things, words that we can use in order to motivate and not feel like that we're pointing out a flaw. Because a lot of people, right, they say, oh well, is it criticism or is it feedback? What's the difference? We'll talk about that. And then something that's fun that you will hopefully start seeing as you continue with Toastmasters is some of those, I like to call them advanced techniques. How can we evaluate and introduce our creativity as an evaluator to make it fun and engaging to the audience as well? And so we're going to just have some examples of things that you can do to make your evaluation not only effective and impactful, but also fun and creative as well. So again, thank you for coming onto the podcast today and sharing with us your wealth of experience and expertise on the topic of evaluation. And again, I hope that this conversation inspires our audience to step out, to become evaluators, to start practicing these skills, and to come back to hear about some more techniques and things that they can learn as they continue on their journey to becoming a more effective evaluator. Thanks, Christina.
Thank you, Lisa.